Hi, my name is Cody Hosterman, and I'll be demonstrating VMware Instant Clone that was recently released in vSphere 6, also known as Project Fargo and VMFork. So I have my vCenter here, and I have my Windows 2012 R2 VM called VMFork source running. You can see its IP address is 10.21.11.100, and it's running the latest version of VMware hardware, version 11. So the first thing we need to do here is we're going to log in to that Windows VM using remote desktop. You can see it's the same IP address there, 11.100, and we'll connect. So what we need to do is we want to make sure that our VM is ready. We have our applications running that we want to be immediately running in our children, all that kind of stuff. What I'm actually going to be doing right now is I'm actually going to verify that my PowerShell script that I want to run at the first boot of the children is sitting on the VM itself. Now I'm just going to type some information, open Notepad, just type a sentence here to show an application running. When I actually fork this off into the child and we log into it for the first time, you'll see the desktop as it sits right now. Okay, we're good. My PowerShell script's there. Notepad's up and running. Go ahead and close the RDP session. All right. So now let's bring up PowerCLI. So PowerCLI is the simplest way to manage the VMFork or the Instant Clone process. So the first thing we're going to do here is connect to my vCenter. Give it my credentials. Now note that these extensions for VMFork or Instant Clone are not directly in PowerCLI. You need to download the PowerCLI extensions fling. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to import that fling module, the extensions, and then we'll go ahead and list the commands that are included in that new module. And you can see there's about 3 or 4 different Instant Clone PowerCLI commandlets that are available. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to grab the parent VM into a variable. You can see that I have my VMFork source now. And let's take a look at the batch file. So you can pass in a script into the parent when you enable it. In the Windows, it's going to be a batch file, so you can't directly pass in a PowerShell. That's why I had to put it on the VM itself. So my batch file is actually going to launch this PowerShell script to do the customizations. So I'm going to pull things using the RPC tool and VMware tools like the IP address, the updated Ethernet MAC address, and then assign it to my VM. So I'll be able to connect over the network without having to do any manual work. You can also do things like rename it using the name of the VM, all kinds of stuff. You can pass all kinds of information in using this. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to enable my parent VM to be a parent. And what this is actually going to do is going to quiesce that VM and then essentially pause it. Right? So the VM is going to be paused so we can start creating children out of it. So it doesn't take very long. My VM is now quiesced and paused and is now a valid parent. We'll take a look at the parent object that I stored it in. You can see indeed it is a Instant Clone parent. That value is true. So we look at my VM here and I right click on it, you'll see a lot of the options in the menu are grayed out because you can't do certain things. Really the only thing you can do with it, power it off or shut down the guest. This is to make sure that the children VM that are forked off it do not get messed up because they are sharing its base virtual disk in that stunned state. So now I'm going to pass in my config parameters, my IP address, which you just saw there. And that IP address is what it's going to assign to the first child VM I create is 10.21.11.101. The child VM has not been created yet, so of course that IP is not pingable. And that config settings is where you pass in all the settings you want to have the VMFork process add to the VMX file, so you can read it from the guest. In this case, I'm only doing the IP address. So now I'm actually going to create the new Instant Clone child. I'm going to give it a name and pass it those config settings. So that's going to create the VM. If we go back to the web client over here and refresh it, you'll see that the child VM has now appeared, but it is now in a powered off state. So it does actually have to be powered on, but it's not a true power on. It's not, the guest OS is not booting. Instead, all it's really doing is resuming it. It's resuming it from that position that the parent was stunned at. So this doesn't take very long at all. We start the VM, and this is basically just the resume process, and it's just going to resume from that memory state, from that virtual disk state, of the original VM, but then start forking off its own data as its own changes, its own memory into its own memory allocation pages, and of course its own Delta virtual disks. So we take a look at that, we refresh the web client, you see that's now powered on, and you'll also see in the command prompt on the left that it is now pingable. So it's come online, that means it's assigned that new IP address, it's refreshed its MAC addresses, things like that inside of the guest. So it's already pinned to it. So I'll change it from .100, what it was when the parent, to .101, which it is now, and we'll connect. And when you connect, you'll see that, hey, it's in the exact state as that parent was when we stunned it, when we enabled it as a parent. And now I can use this and do whatever I want with this inside this child VM. And I can do this over and over again, create all kinds of different children VM from this same parent. So thanks for watching, and I'm excited to see where this product goes. Bye.